This story is from a childhood friend who told me that this happened to him a while ago. Of course, long ago, and it still unnerves me to this day. She was genuinely freaked out, and her family even backed up her claims, so here it goes. Basically, my friend and her family moved to this rental property, which my friend said was haunted. It gave everyone an off feeling. Something was not okay. Those who visited or stayed over would mention it even. I myself experienced this odd feeling of foreboding whenever I went over there, and I believe in the consensus that the house was indeed haunted. It honestly felt oppressive in the house, and you would feel this pitiful dread that is hard to compute into words, and it was really uncomfortable to experience, to say the least. Anyway, this particular inexplicable event was enough for my friend's family to pack up and stay with relatives until they moved out permanently. That is the basis of this post, of course. On this fateful afternoon, my friend had arrived back home from the park and heard an argument taking place in the kitchen between her mom and dad. My friend thought that this was odd, as both her parents should be at work, so she called out, "Mom?" before unlocking the front door and going inside. My friend said the house fell instantly silent, an uncanny silence like the air had been sucked out of the place and felt stifling and wrong. Then her mom said, "Hey Anna, we are just in here." Let's call my friend Anna. My friend was just outside the closed kitchen door at this point and froze beyond opening. It was her mother's voice, but there was something off, like the cadence was missing, that made her mother. It did sound completely flat and unnatural. My friend decided to bolt back out of the door, and she decided to wait outside until her brother came home. But she said as she turned back to the house, she saw her mother peering at her from the lounge room window. But it wasn't her mother. Her face, or in this case, that face, was the same. Everything was the same, but her face was devoid of anything that made it her mother. There was no recognition on her mother's face. There was no indication that she was looking directly at her daughter. There was no emotion in the expression. Nothing. The eyes looked unstaring and utterly blank. My friend screamed and ran down the street to her mother's work and confirmed that she was there all this time and had never been home. Initially, my friend's mother reasoned that someone must have broken into the house, but a later investigation proved nothing had been stolen and the back door was in fact locked as the front door when my friend came home. No one could rationalize who my friend saw in the window and why it looked so much like her mother, but not fully human. So, that was the deciding factor to knock the folk out of there and find somewhere else to live. The landlord denied stuff initially when they lived there, but later did admit that tenants didn't stay long, saying that there was something wrong in the house. My friend also told me that she was the only one who actually saw anything definitely sinister in the house, but her family said that they definitely did feel an evil presence there, which manifested into the doppelganger experience that my friend had. Utterly terrifying. I was a kid, but a teenager, you know, old enough to know that Santa Claus did not exist, but one Christmas Eve, I was staying at my uncle's old farmhouse. In the middle of the night, I awoke to the sight of an old man looking exactly like the typical Santa. I was so confused and scared, so I just kept my eyes closed, and I eventually fell back asleep. I did tell my family about this mysterious Santa visit, and to my surprise, no one ridiculed me for thinking I saw Santa. Instead, they determined that I was old enough to know the truth about the former owner of the farmhouse. He was a real person who, sadly, was found dead with suspicious conditions. And it turns out that my uncle had plenty of odd occurrences throughout his time living there. Never anything hurtful or violent, fortunately, but definitely his presence was known. What really sealed the deal was when they showed me a picture of the previously said aforementioned owner, Saul. And what do you know? He did have a remarkable resemblance to Santa. Rest in peace, Saul. Rest in peace. I was camping with my wife, sitting around the campfire. It started to pour a lot of rain, so we went inside the tent. Inside the tent, the rain was so heavy that we couldn't hear anything over the pitter-patter, pitter-patter, pitter-patter hitting the tent. We decided to change our clothes and call it a night. We get into our sleeping bags and turn out the light and hear like the sound that the Motorola phone would make when the battery was dying. Ta-dun, ta-dun, ta-dun. The only thing was that we didn't have any phones that made that particularly specific sound, and our phones were turned off. So that's where my wife and I were, miles from anyone, pouring rain. We couldn't hear if someone is walking up to our tent, and we cannot tell if someone walked away from our tent, of course. We were trapped inside this canvas death trap, with only one exit. Oh no. We froze right there and waited for what seemed like hours. Eventually, I grabbed my gun and light and made a dash for the door, trying to get out as fast as I could. Once out, I ran around my tent. And what do I see? Nothing. I see nothing. I see no one. I do not see any sign of life anywhere. We grabbed our valuables and we decided to make the 10-minute trek to our car. We made it safe. We drove an hour home and we slept better than we would have slept if we had stayed. The next day we drove back to get our stuff. Once we get to our tent, it did not look like anything had been messed with. Nothing out of place. Once we got home and unpacked, my wife couldn't find her underwear. None of it. None of them. Literally, nothing else was missing from our stuff. And this was the wildest and creepiest experience of our life. It may seem anticlimactic, but it was creepy nonetheless. My father was diagnosed with terminal cancer in the month of May in the year 2018. He was given a couple of months to live, and my sister was his primary caregiver. I would share some of the responsibility by going over occasionally to help her with all sorts of daily routines. My sister was asked to be part of a wedding party. Her best friend since grade school was getting married. She had called to ask for me to make sure my schedule was clear, so that she would be able to attend a bridal shower. So I opened up my calendar and I marked the day at time. I made sure it was properly emphasized and circled. This would have been early June in the year 2018, scheduling for late July 2018. A few weeks after this conversation, my father inevitably had succumbed to his diagnosis and died in July of the year 2018 in the afternoon, on the day 4th. The following few weeks were non-stop with arrangements and legal matters. I was the executor, so I was very busy every day after his passing. One morning I was feeling overwhelmed and I needed some time to myself. I had asked my husband to take our daughter out for the day so I could just reflect and nap. I fell asleep on the sofa. I had been sleeping for a little while when I awoke to hearing my father's voice. Wake up, Dolly." That was what he called me while growing up. It sounded as if he were standing over me. It sent shivers down my spine. I sat up and I had this overwhelming urge to grab my phone. When I opened it, my calendar was open, which it wasn't, of course, beforehand, and it was the same day and time where I had scheduled for my sister's outing a month beforehand. As hang up with that. It always made me question a lot of things, but ultimately I was grateful to have been able to hang with him after all, even with this creepy reminder. I haven't thought about that in quite some time, so thank you very much for asking this question and allowing me to remember this particular thing. This happened to me in the past month. For background, I work in a retirement home doing activities. On this day, I was filling in at the healthcare center, which is basically hospice. I was in the day room reading stories with one of the ladies. She suddenly asked me who that woman was, while to me looked like she was pointing across the room. I don't know, but I'll be happy to ask her so we can find out. I thought that she was talking about one of the CNAs who was sitting across the room. To which she responded, No, Sonny. The woman sitting next to you, the one on your left." There was no one sitting next to me. She continued, "Yes, Sonny, she looks just like you, but her hair is longer. She says she doesn't have a name, but she's very nice. She's very nice." I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end, and I must have been giving her a look because she asked, "What happened? Did I say something wrong?" To which I responded, "No, don't worry, nothing's wrong." I made a quick excuse to leave, and I practically ran back to my memory care unit. Now, here is what particularly shook me up. I was supposed to be an identical twin. I was, but my twin died while we were still in the womb, leaving only me. This is not information I share with people I work with. One of the CNAs knew from looking at me that something had happened and wanted to know what it was. She was equally horrified when I told her the story. When I was in college, I was walking across campus to my early morning class when this old white man, with the bluest eyes I've ever seen, stopped me to ask for bus ticket money. Everything went still around us. No sounds. Not a single sound. You could hear a pin drop. The air felt stiff, and there was literally no one but us outside. This man's eyes were like aquamarine, but the rest of his face? It was like his skin was plastered on. His nose looked stuck down like clay. His cheeks looked like they were barely hanging on to whatever was underneath. He truly looked extremely bizarre. He stops me and compliments my lipstick and asks if I could help him pay for a bus ticket so he could visit his son. I told him that I didn't have cash to help him. He never breaks eye contact and tells me that he's a veteran and takes his wallet out to show me his military label. When he opens it, I see a wad of cash in there, and he looks at me again and asks if I could help. While all of this was happening, the only thing I felt was that I was in danger. I really did think I was in the presence of someone evil, even though he did not say anything or do anything to provoke this feeling. I ended up reaching in my bag for quarters and gave them to him. He held my hand for what felt like forever and let me go on my merry way. I think about this encounter a lot because it felt like he was pretending to be human. Really, I'm serious. His skin looked like it was made out of wet clay and wrongly placed. His eyes were so blue that they look unnatural. And why ask for money when you had it already?